supplements only are not doing themselves much good.
Right.
You got to have the magnesium.
Now, when you see a high calcium with a high magnesium, which is also pretty typical, because magnesium seems to come in at a lower atomic mass weight, correct? You need more magnesium to affect calcium? Or am I messed up on this?
Usually one talks about a 1-to-1 or a 1-to-0.5 ratio of calcium to magnesium.
Okay.
The thing about the magnesium, when you see calcium and magnesium elevated, say in the hair elements, usually it's more of an indication of stress.
Really?
Yes.
Because you're seeing lower potassium and sodium at the same time?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So in that case, it's not necessarily telling you about the tissue reserves or the body levels, but it's telling you that there's some sort of stress going on, and that could be from heavy metals, it could be from toxic chemicals, or it could just be strong emotional stress, one's occupation,
life.
if one has teenage children,
Yes.
yeah, just life in general. Right.
So, you know, what this brings me to is the next question. What about these people who are ordering these tests on the internet? I mean, just from our conversation here, you're teaching me things that I didn't know, and I know a lot more than most.
Right.
So people are going off and they're getting these TMAs done. Are these reliable and responsible testing labs that people are subscribing to?
Unfortunately, that's the problem. There's two problems there. One, hair elements analysis is very technically difficult to do, and you have to have very sophisticated equipment and very highly trained technicians. There are if you want to call them laboratories, basically people doing work in their basement. They don't have clean facilities. We can measure parts per trillion for some elements. And if you don't have basically a sterile environment with respect to elements, contamination is a huge problem.
Sure.
The second part of it is that the kinds of companies that you're talking about are primarily into it to sell supplements. And not only is their initial analytical assessment not accurate, but then on top of that, they basically just make up stories about what the results mean in order to sell you supplements.
All right, you guys, so the idea is that you don't go on the internet and have your hair tissue analyzed.
Absolutely.
You need to go to a responsible lab. Now, how many labs are responsible in the U.S.?
I'd say there's 1 or 2 out of about 10.
There are 10. I didn't know there were so many. Okay, Doctor's Data would be a great one. And can we give another name?
Trace Elements.
Pretty good.
In Colorado is pretty good.
Okay, that's good to know. So there are 2. There are 2, and you would find, I mean, how would our viewing audience find a practitioner who uses one of the responsible and reliable labs?
That's kind of like trying to find a needle in a haystack. For people that are really motivated to do that, one should call our 800 number, and we could refer you to a physician or an affiliate like yourself, a trained nutritionist, who is licensed to order the test, and not only order the test, but properly interpret it and help the patient understand what it means. Because you can actually do a lot of harm by misinterpreting. People see that their copper might, in their opinion, be low, and start, you know, whopping on the copper supplements, and excess copper can be very toxic.
Right.
It can drive a zinc deficiency. So. Mineral metabolism is very, very intricate and very well balanced, and you can't just throw in a bunch of one element and expect to not disrupt another element.
Now, if someone were to come in and have a TMA done, a tissue mineral analysis, what's the turnaround time? How quickly could they have those results?
The turnaround time in a good laboratory is about 24 hours.
Okay.
And we can even email or fax the results. So within a week, certainly.
Within a week is great.
Yes.
Okay. Tell us real quickly, I think there was an expose a couple weeks ago on one of our favorite, you know, late night watch television shows, and they really lambasted hair tissue mineral analysis. Can you give us a rebuttal to that?
It was actually entertaining. It was very aggravating at first, but it was very entertaining to me as a scientist that they used a very unscientific approach to test the scientific validity of something.
They use some dog hair or something,
They,
right?
yeah, it was totally ridiculous.
But I've had my dog's hair tested. I mean, I know my dog has hypothyroid. I know my dog has arthritis, and actually I did it to test my dog.
Well,
and
we
you know what?
actually
she is arthritic.
we actually have reference ranges for different species of animals, and if a doctor puts on the form that it's a horse or if it's a dog, we'll use the appropriate reference range
right.
because we
so
all
be candid.
right. The interesting thing about that was that they did make a very good point, two good points. When that one point was that there are labs that are doing this wrong.
Right.
There are some bogus labs that aren't of high quality and do not give reproducible results. And secondly, they really brought out that you have to interpret these things properly. You have to go through a trained healthcare professional for the interpretation. If you just go on the internet and buy what it downloads off the internet, you can get into trouble. So that was actually very positive to me that they did that part of it.
Right, consumer beware kind of approach.
And so for that part of it, I thank them for doing that.
Okay, so we thank you, Daylight.
Yeah.
All right, real quickly, because we're, believe it or not, running out of time. Talk to me about diet and what dietary approaches people need to consider when they're looking at ADD, given whether or not they have the opportunity to, you know, do a hair tissue mineral analysis. What is really important? We talked about dysbiosis and gut problems and having too much yeast or possibly candida overgrowth, not enough probiotics in the intestines. So what do people need to do from a nutritional vantage point to heal themselves if they can't afford to do anything else?
The simplest thing, and probably most effective thing, would be to markedly cut down the sugar.
Okay.
Cut down the sugar, make sure that they're getting enough zinc and enough magnesium. There's been several studies, very good studies, peer-reviewed, published scientific journal studies, where magnesium was a tremendous benefit in decreasing the hyperactivity component, particularly in children.
That's great.
So just a good, solid diet with minimal sugar, and it's common sense.
And also remember, ladies and gentlemen and kids out there, that our sugars come from refined carbohydrates as well. So if you are sensitive, you know, remember that you need to look out for the things that are highly processed and adulterated and don't have any life in them. Otherwise you'll be feeding your little sugar bunnies, we call them. Okay, essential fatty acids, what about those? Why are they so important in ADD and ADHD?
This is very new research that's coming out, and part of the problem with ADD and ADHD is a terrible diet that these kids are on.
Right.
With zinc deficiency, you lose taste acuity and you tend to just thrive on the high sugar. You know, junk foods, which are low in the essential fatty acids. And essential fatty acids make up the structure of every membrane in our body. We think of dry skin, but we're talking about every cell in the body. And if that membrane isn't of the correct composition related to fatty acids, nothing's going to work.
Okay, so essential fatty acids come from our seeds, our nuts, our oils, our cold water fish, our legumes, and our beans, and our whole grains. So it's important to have those in your diet every day in ample amounts. Those oils are, you know, they're my favorite. So if you're not eating them, you better start.
Right.
Okay, is there hope for these troubled youths and the parents of these kids who have ADD? What is the overall prognosis if the family complies with a good nutritional intervention protocol?
The key is family compliance. It's a whole package. You can't just expect Johnny to quit eating Pop-Tarts and everybody else continues.
Right.
The prognosis is very good that you can improve social skills, you can improve grades in school, you can keep these kids out of jail and keep them out of trouble if you adhere to some real basic nutritional guidelines.
Okay. And an overgrowth of yeast, again, would be witnessed by somebody who's constipated or has IBS?
Constipated.
Acne, energy?
Yes, yes.
Okay, what else?
Low energy, sugar craving.
A lot of sugar
Major
cravings.
sugar
How many of you
craving.
out there crave sugar?
Lots.
Way too many Americans. And you know why? Because we quit eating proteins and essential fatty acids 2 decades ago, you guys. So it's really important to listen to David's advice. Remember that there's hope for ADD, there's hope for people with hyperactivity and focus issues. You know, give us a call if you have more questions. And David, I can't thank you enough for joining us. You're a wealth of information. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for being here. And folks, take good care of your health, okay? If you have any questions, call me. Until next week, this is Deborah Arneson bringing you Health Quest. Take good care. Bye-bye. It was great.